and he was the #1 guy in the whole region. This high school student doesn't stand a chance. Then the man with long hair added that the guy he found does nothing but his training, so right now he's a monster. Hospital. A bright green cross light illuminated the front of the building. Silhouettes of people could be seen in the window of one of the rooms. Haru tells the doctor that Hanul has suddenly lost all his powers, just like the doctor said. The doctor says that according to the data collected by the oxygen chamber, his condition is only getting worse. Taeshik frantically asked how serious is it? Could he die? The doctor replied that the human body has a natural limiter to prevent stress that would otherwise cause the body tissues to collapse. The doctor added that the drug Hanul had taken had removed that ability from his body. He may have gained unprecedented strength and even recovered quickly from his previous injuries, but his body will not last long in such a state. The doctor believes that extreme drowsiness and fatigue will soon manifest, and eventually, perhaps even the general life-sustaining functions of the body will cease. Haru asked, "What does he mean by that?" The man replied, "What you heard, literally." Taeshik excitedly looked at the doctor and cried out, "Is there really no way?" Holding a vial in his hands, the doctor said that fortunately this kind of side effect was within their expectation, so they had prepared the medicine in advance. He explained that the medicine worked the same way for diabetics whose bodies were unable to produce insulin on their own. Hanul would lose his inhuman strength, but he would live longer. The doctor added that until they could find a way to cure him completely, he would have to rely on the drug temporarily. Hanul asked if he had to take it daily. The doctor replied that if he wanted to live, he had to daily and without interruption. A bright light from a lantern showed 3 human silhouettes underneath. Taeshik asked Hanul why is he going to the training room. Maybe he should rest before the upcoming match. Hanul replied that after the 3rd person called, he had a coach waiting for him in the training room. Taeshik wondered who was important enough to make him come here. Suddenly, Taeshik shouted sharply, startled and trembling, and asked why Han Cheol was here to take revenge. Han Chul calmly said that it looked like the mobster had kept his word. Taeshik behind Hanyul's back asked fearfully. Han Cheol said that he had heard that Hanyul had helped him by taking his place as the group's spokesman, thus sparing him from punishment. He asked why he'd done it. He didn't think he was so soft. Hanul was surprised to hear him say that he was in no position to help others, but he had a question he wanted to know the answer to. He wanted to know why his reach didn't work on him. Han Cheol remained ambiguously silent. Then Han Chul went on to say that he was sure that he had put all his strength into the blow during the contact, but it had no effect, as if he had been trying to break a stone with an egg. Han Cheol replied that it was because Hanul was trying to break the stone with an egg. The boy didn't understand what that meant, and said that he could understand if he put little force into the blow, but he didn't understand what Han Cheol was talking about. Pointing his finger downward, the man said it was footwork. Hanyul looked at him questioningly, not understanding his words. Han Cheol added that just like a thrown egg, if his body flies haphazardly behind his fist during a punch, he will not be able to show his strength effectively. He gave the example of an impact machine that is firmly embedded in the floor and a friend standing on wheels. The anchored machine, with no degrees of freedom, will be able to realize the full potential of the impact, whereas the machine with wheels pushes back, resulting in energy dissipation. He then summarized that all of Hanul's reaching punches were done in the air, without stable footing. If he had kicked in this situation, the effect would have been more impressive, but it would have affected his accuracy, and he would not have been able to hit any weaknesses, let alone open himself up for a counterattack. Hanul asked why his teacher hadn't told him that. Haru suddenly replied that it wasn't that he had kept it from him, but that the information would have been of no use to him. Hanul was puzzled. Haru asked Hanul that he had no fighting skills at all. Hanul repeated her words worriedly. Han Cheol said that in order to effectively hit the weak points of a heavy opponent who specialized in defense, Hanul needed extensive combat experience, but when they first met, it didn't look like he even knew the basics. All he had to do was rely on his speed and recklessly gallop around his opponent. Han Cheol asked, what should he do then? Han Cheol replied that thinking back to their fight, he thought there was a way out, but it would be too damn dangerous. Clouds covered the dark night sky. The bright rays of the sun reflected on the bright balloon that was the roof of the Ganghan Night building. In the study sat 2 men opposite each other. The 3rd man in the room was behind the couch. In front of the windows was a television set with GT League written on it. The man with serious facial features said that the boss had long had a good opinion of the man across from him. That's the only reason he was still here. But when this guy loses, the man will lose not only his seat but also his head. The man with sleek styling replied that then wouldn't it be fair for the man with serious facial features to put his place second on the line if the guy suddenly wins? Suddenly the man behind the couch shouted out to watch his tongue. Suddenly someone uttered that it sounded interesting, and why not? It was a man with a beard and mustache. He said it would add interest to the viewing experience. A man with serious facial features told his boss that the match had just started. Suddenly there was a rumbling sound. A man with his hair slicked back asked excitedly, "What the hell?" The man standing behind the couch opened his mouth wide and told his boss that it looked like the match was over before it had even started. A clear blue sky. In front of a building with a gray facade stood Han Cheol and Hanul. The boy asked if it would definitely work. Han Cheol replied that right now, without proper footwork, he wouldn't be able to get a good kick. Scratching the back of his head, Hanul asked about the teacher. Where was he when he needed him? Han Cheol was silent for a moment, then looked up sharply and asked if Han Gyul could stay the way he was. The boy only mumbled. Han Cheol went on to say that when he'd seen him in the alley and in that fight, he'd looked like a crazy maniac. But now he was... Han Gyul hesitated and said he didn't know why. But when he took off his glasses, it was like he was a different person. Usually he wants to beat up all those thugs at school, but when he comes face to face with them, he starts to shake with fear. But when he takes off his glasses... Han Cheol interrupted and asked that he realized that along with his eyesight, he loses his fear. And then he changes like a madman to nail someone. There was silence. Then Han Cheol said that there was someone he had to apologize to no matter what, and he had to beat the guy to do it. He went on to say that he's only been training his footwork for a few hours anyway. He then asked Han Cheol if he thought it would help. Han Cheol replied that he would have to rely on fate this time. The bright rays of the sun reflected on the bright balloon that was the roof of the Ganghan Night building. In the study sat two men, opposite each other. The third man in the room was behind the sofa. In front of the windows was a television set with GT League written on it. The man with serious facial features said that the boss had long had a good opinion of the man across from him. That's the only reason he was still here. But when this guy loses, the man will lose not only his seat but also his head. The man with sleek styling replied that then wouldn't it be fair for the man with serious facial features to put his place second on the line if the guy suddenly wins? Suddenly the man behind the couch shouted out to watch his tongue. Suddenly someone uttered that it sounded interesting, and why not? It was a man with a beard and mustache. He said it would add interest to the viewing experience. A man with serious facial features told his boss that the match had just started. Suddenly there was a rumbling sound. A man with his hair slicked back asked excitedly, "What the hell?" The man standing behind the couch opened his mouth wide and told his boss that it looked like the match was over before it had even started. Camera. A hard punch and Hanul is knocked out. The guy with the big smile on his face, the monster, towers over him. Taeshik is holding a cell phone in his hands and is watching Hanul's fight live with Haru and Han Cheol. Taeshik sharply and questioningly blurts out that Hanul has lost. On the battlefield lies Hanul. As soon as the referee raised his hand and wanted to say that the match is over, the monster guy shrieked sharply and surprised. Hanul stood up. He thought, is this guy really trying to kill him? Suddenly he gets another kick and then the next kick. He slides across the battlefield, powerless and exhausted. He stands up and sighs. The camera is still filming live. An agitated Taeshik looking at the phone screen asked that Hanul didn't pass out after all. Why isn't he defending himself? Haru said that it's over and that he didn't even stand up. Taeshik exclaimed that he thought Han Cheol helped Hanul with his training. Han Cheol replied that he had no idea what was going on, as if he wasn't even human. There was a whistling sound, and the boys looked in the direction it came from. There were bandits, men in black. Then Han Cheol said that it looked like they would be in trouble if they lost this match. The blinding rays of the sun illuminated the room where the fight had taken place, and the silhouettes of two tired figures could be seen. The monster guy bared his teeth, then accelerated and struck Hanul with all his strength. Impact. The leg steady and the camera still captures the fight. The bright rays of the sun reflected on the bright balloon that was on the roof of the Ganghan Night building. The men sat thoughtfully and tensely watching the events on the television. A man with long hair standing behind the couch said that the schoolboy has no defense, just standing open. He then stated that it looked like it was over. With an evil smile on his face, the man sitting on the couch raised his hand. Two stout bouncers grabbed the man across from him. While they held him down, the man on the couch turned to the boss and told him to let him deal with number 3 and this high school student. The boss remained thoughtfully silent with his arms folded in front of him. The man who was being held by the bouncers was already covered in sweat. He thought it was over. The guys were sitting on a bench with men in black all around them. The monster guy accelerated. He had a strong and at the same time terrifying energy, shouting, "Dying!" He tries to strike. Before he knew it, Hanul was in a stance, swinging and striking. The monster guy, surprised by these events, cries out and wonders how this is possible. Everyone watching the match was in great shock. A crushing blow that hits Hanul's opponent with a wave. The monster guy flew off the field, smashing a window. The people on the street heard this rumble and stood in bewilderment. Haru, Tai-shik, and Uhanchio looked at the phone screen with their mouths hanging open. They all jumped up together and began to cheer. Silhouettes could be seen in the window of the building. A man with a serious face exclaimed in surprise, "What was that and how did that happen?" A man with a beard and a mustache said that this kid was intentionally being hit. The man sitting on the couch shouted that it can't be like that. No one would be able to stay on their feet after hitting their guy. The boss calmly said that the guy was not a bad guy, since he was able to take such blows. He had never seen anything like this. He then continued, saying that for some reason he felt that his subordinate was not at all happy about their group's victory. The man sitting on the couch became worried. The boss reminded him that now shouldn't he remember his agreement with the third man? The man squirmed and looked at his boss worriedly. The guys were sitting on a bench outside. Tai-shik cheerfully told Uhanchio that he had taught Hanul something after all. Uhanchio replied that that last punch had not been a good one, and that Hanul had taken advantage of it and gone at him on purpose. Tai-shik agreed admiringly and said that it was called an eagle's eye or something like that, wasn't it? Uhanchio replied with a serious expression that be that as it may, it was one of Hanul's few advantages, and so he had to take the risk of taking blows until the enemy lowered his guard. But still, he had never thought that such a monster would be against him. He then added that besides, Hanul had a shoulder problem. How did he? Tai-shik interrupted him, saying that it was partly to his credit. Gathering his hands into a fist, the guy exclaimed happily that everything had worked out and now he wouldn't have to be a runner. All the while, Haru stared thoughtfully at the phone, then said doubtfully that something was wrong here. Tai-shik asked what exactly. She frowned at the phone and replied that the judge wasn't announcing the verdict. Uhancheo and Tai-shik shouted indignantly, "What?" Through the window of the building, 3 figures could be seen, 2 of which were on the floor powerless. Hanul was on his knees, breathing heavily, and the monster guy was still at the window, not moving. The referee looked at the monster guy silently, but then told him that if he didn't want to be disqualified, he had better go back to the platform. Hanul anxiously sighed, but the monster guy had already woken up. He looked like a wild beast preparing to attack its prey. Gang Hanul, sitting on all fours, said that the situation was shit. He couldn't even move a finger if this asshole decided to get up. The monster guy grabbed the camera with one hand and said he dared to hit him. He clenched his teeth, blood dripping on his lips. Then he said angrily the word "kill." The guy smashed the camera that was filming the live broadcast with a strong blow and shouted that he would kill Hanul. The camera along with the tripod broke into pieces. Even outside, rumbling and screaming could be heard. The guys turned anxiously towards the building. Tai-shik excitedly asked what was that and what was going on. He panickedly shouted, "What happened to the image?" Then the guys heard stronger sounds. It was the siren of an ambulance. The car was rushing towards the entrance of the building at high speed. Haru cried out fearfully, "Oh no!" A large white building with many windows with a large green cross on the roof. It was a hospital. A green rectangular lantern glowed above the door. The guys were waiting in the hallway. Some sat holding their heads. Some stood looking at the door. Haru decided to break the silence by asking the judge if he could tell them what had happened. He began to describe the scene, saying that the monster guy had smashed the camera that was filming the live broadcast and shouted that he was going to kill Hanul. Then he took a metal pipe and wanted to hit with it, but the judge immediately tried to stop him. He didn't expect such a turn of events. The judge loudly asked the guy what he was doing and for him to put the pipe down immediately. The monster guy angrily and almost without control yelled that he would kill anyone who got in the way. Before he knew it, the referee flew to the side at high speed. Monster guy deftly flipped him off. He then shouted again that he would kill Hanul. Taking great speed, he aimed the pipe with the tip at Hanul. At this very time, the judge shouted, "No!" Covered in sweat, the judge reported that afterward, Hanul started bleeding profusely. Tai-shik looked fearfully at the judge and asked how badly he was hurt. Suddenly, someone's voice was heard saying that it wasn't that he was injured. It was the doctor. He came out of the operating room. The guys asked him about what happened. Looking down, the doctor said there wasn't much he could do and for them to follow him. Above the door was a sign that said intensive care. Uhan Cheol, Haru, and Tai Shik walked into the room. Looking at the bed, Haru was horrified. Pressing her hand to her mouth, she collapsed to the floor.